Hey, it's Terry, and this is the Something Spooky review for The Invisible Man 2020. So, obviously, the movie was released in 2020 by Universal, and it was produced by Blumhouse Films. It was directed by Leigh Whannell, who had previously directed Insidious 3 and had wrote almost all of the Insidious and Saw films. So, Leigh has gone from being a writer in horror to a lot of the greatest horror movies in recent time, Insidious and Saw, now directing The Invisible Man 2020. It has a $126 million box office against a $7 million budget. And so those are tremendous numbers, especially when you consider that the film basically had a 4-week theatrical run. It was cut short, of course, by the COVID pandemic and was quickly made available on renting services. It was like a premium at home theater experience, one of the first of those. I don't know if those numbers are in any way incorporated to the box office. I can't imagine that they are. I don't know if those numbers exist, but it made $126 million at the box office, which is pretty impressive. It also has a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is also very impressive, probably helped contribute to that great box office haul. Obviously, it was very well received, and I will say out the gate that I agree with that. I think it is tremendous. It is the horror movie of the year so far. It's one of my favorite monster movies ever, honestly, and I have a lot of other videos up on The Invisible Man. There's going to be more coming all weekend. I'm calling this The Invisible Man Weekend, so you can look into my more specific thoughts on some of those on the Something Spooky channel. But going into this movie, I want to say off the bat that it was originally going to be part of the Dark Universe with Johnny Depp as the Invisible Man, and I have rarely been as grateful for something not happening, because while I like Johnny Depp, I do not like the Dark Universe, and I can only imagine how bad that movie would have been. It would have been nothing like the movie that we got, so thank God that that didn't happen, and instead we got the movie that we have, and hopefully this is going to finally put the Dark Universe away forever and move on into this new direction, because this is clearly the way to go. Also want to say right off the bat, Elisabeth Moss is amazing. I don't talk about actors a whole lot. It's not exactly my perspective, but she is just undeniably brilliant in this role, makes the movie. It's such a challenging role. So much of it is riding completely on her to, react and impart things to the audience. And I mean, she's obviously just the principal figure in the film, with the main antagonist being invisible. So Elisabeth Moss deserves every bit of credit that she has got for the role, and it would not be the same movie without her and her performance. So the other thing that makes this movie so terrific out the gate is that it is so smart with the Invisible Man, the monster, and this is one of the things that I talk about the most in those other videos you should check out. But basically, just in both its backstory and its execution, it is the best this monster has ever been. It is a very timely monster for everything that we're going through. Also, everything that has been happening in culture for a long time. I talk a lot about in the other videos how the filmmaker's intention for The Invisible Man was to be this message on online harassment and the way people can attack you and do harm to people in plain sight without anybody really seeing it and having any ability to do anything about it. And that is the message of this movie, and that's what the filmmakers intended, and it's done very well. There's also, I think, a degree of interpretation which is purely coincidental, and I also have a video about how it ties into everything we've lived through the last few months with the pandemic and the virus, and of course the basic idea of an invisible, unseen threat. So the Invisible Man, as a monster, as a horror, just threat, which is what horror is. It embodies, fears that we have and confronts the idea of death. That's the baseline of horror. All of a sudden, the Invisible Man is just one of the most relevant monsters to our age, and has come to life in this film in a way that I don't think he ever has before as a horror invention. So that is another reason why this movie is just so terrific. Again, it has just so many different meanings and messages about abuse, and it's not too heavy-handed with these. It just really imparts the feelings that it is trying to convey in this deep sense, without just making it on the surface what it's trying to say. So to get into the movie specifically, I'm going to start at the very, very beginning, and it's a nerdy thing, but I love the opening title. As soon as the waves start going up and you see the title, The Invisible Man, I was like, oh man, I was already so hyped for this movie, and that was perfect. Let's go. It gets off to a great start. Loved it. It continues that strong start with a very engaging premise, and I don't go too far into specific story elements here, so I'm going to keep it vague, but it has an immediate intrigue where you're just trying to catch up to what's happening. And it's almost like a espionage heist kind of film at first, but in a good way, where you're just like, wait, what's happening? Who are these characters? And you're immediately pulled into the world, and it's immediately beautiful. It looks great, and you just are engaged off the bat. And then it continues this kind of slow, creepy build for a while. It's a really well-paced movie. Without talking about a lot of things specifically, I just want to kind of say in sequence that it's a very nice, slow burn horror build for a while. And then, of course, there are some really explosive moments that catch you off guard. And then it has a huge ending. It feels like a big climactic ending. So it really just throughout the movie is paced terrifically. And it starts with that kind of, pulling you in with this intrigue, this unknown in the beginning, and then moving into this creepy build, and then big explosive climax, and it just pulls it off perfectly. I'm going to talk about a few of the scares and scenes in particular, but again, I try not to spoil anything, but I just want to make a mention of some of the stuff I liked best. So the attic, the ladder scene, which I will talk a little bit more specifically about because it was in the trailer. It's one of the few things that I had seen in the movie before I went into the movie. I went into the movie, as I usually do, as blind as I can. As soon as I see a trailer, usually I'll watch it once, and if I'm like, oh, I want to see that, then I won't watch it again, and I don't want to see a final trailer or anything like that. But I had seen this moment where the Invisible Man is like, where Elizabeth Moss is looking down at the ladder, and then she throws like paint, and you see it splatter on the Invisible Man, who is suddenly, visible on the ladder. It's one of the kind of iconic scares, I think, from the marketing campaign of the movie, so I don't mind mentioning it that specifically, and it's great. Even knowing that it was coming, that whole time, as soon as she gets the ladder and goes up into the attic, I'm like, oh man, okay, here it comes. I know what's going to happen here. And it takes a minute to happen, so like I was like waiting for it, totally ready for it to happen, and still I was like, oh, it got me. It startled me. It's well executed. So a few other scenes like that, or like there's the scenes with the chair, which is very iconic from the original Invisible Man movie. We see him sitting in the chairs a lot, and it's that kind of old-fashioned chair. So like those scenes are fun and effective. There's actually a cut scene, a deleted scene on the disc that was not in the theatrical movie, which kind of goes into that in much greater degree. But I'm glad they cut it. It's goofy. A lot of the deleted scenes, I can see why they were deleted. They did not kind of fit the pacing and feel of the movie. So kudos to the editor and Lee Winnell. But the other scene that I really, really like that I want to mention is the knife scene. And I won't say any more than that, but it involves a knife, which, big surprise that there's a knife in the movie. And the way it is done is brilliant. I think it's one of the scariest scenes I've seen in a while. It's very, very good. Also, the hallway scene with the police is one of the most movie monster scenes there is. I loved that as well. It's not really like a lot of scenes in classic movie monsters, but it's what people think of a lot when they think of movie monsters. For some reason, I'm not entirely sure where that comes from, because we don't see a lot of things like that in their earliest movie monsters, but it's very much of that feel. And then the vibe of the character and the Invisible Man, that is, the monster, the way he acts and behaves is kind of like the most like the spirit of the original Invisible Man, where he's kind of like, cocky and just a jerk. And that's how the Invisible Man is, and that's how he comes through in that scene in particular. So I thought that was interesting, with it being the kind of scene that is supposed to feel, I feel like, this big movie monster moment. So I don't want to talk too much more specifically about anything in the movie, because a lot of it does ride on mystery and intrigue, and one of the things that's best about it is that I never really knew where it was going. It never felt predictable. It never felt on rails. I wasn't really sure how it was going to end or how safe any of the characters were. It's one of those movies that really keeps you guessing throughout, and I don't want to spoil anything about that. So I just want to say again just how excellent everything in the execution of this movie is. The writing is terrific. The acting, as we've talked about, is terrific. It looks so good. The mise-en-scène and the cinematography. It's just a terrific movie. It's a terrific monster movie. If you're looking for something that kind of speaks to our times and everything that we're going through, maybe to help process some things that you have felt and dealt with, this is what horror is. That's what art is. So it is one of those timely movies that just happens to come, or any piece of art, when it's needed and when it kind of seems like the time is right for it. So it's beautiful, it's scary, it's relevant. I could not be more happy with The Invisible Man. I am going to give it an A+, the top of the scale. And I know that seems dramatic, but it is really that good. I hope you will check it out. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a like and a share, and remember to follow Something Spooky. Thanks.